All right, what's up? What's good? What's happening? What it do, baby? You are tuned in to another edition of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. It's your boy Xavier, aka X, aka Zay. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Joined by my brother from another, Kory Blackshear. Y'all know him as KB. Man, KB, it's April, bro. It's hard to believe we here.
Yeah, man. March flew by, man. Good to, bless show start off my morning. So I'm looking forward to it.
And we actually got to start off with some breaking news, man, in the NFL world. Kirk Cousins has a new home. I didn't even realize the Falcons had already cut him, to be honest with you. But Kirk Cousins is now going to be a Las Vegas Raider. That news coming out just within the past hour or so at the time of this recording here on Thursday morning. And believe it or not, I like it. And I like it because you've heard all these rumblings about the Raiders drafting Fernando Mendoza, that being a far gone conclusion. But the questions have been, do they feel that he's ready to be an NFL starter from day one? And one thing we know about Tom Brady, KB, because we've heard him say it in interviews for the past few years, he feels that in a lot of cases of young quarterbacks, they need time to sit, develop, learn the playbook, learn from a veteran. To me, this is the perfect type of situation for that to take place, because just because you draft the guy number one overall doesn't mean you automatically have to start him on day one. That's where a lot of teams end up making mistakes with these quarterbacks and just players in general, but especially at the quarterback position. You feel a pressure to have to do it, but you got a guy like Tom Brady in place, and you know that that's his philosophy, feeling like guys might need to sit for a year, maybe even two. But in Fernando's case, I do believe if he sits, it will be for a year at most. Your early thoughts here on the direction you feel like the Raiders are going in?
I mean, I like it. I think I pretty much like most of the offseason moves they did make. Like I said, Kirk Cousins, he's been a steady veteran. I know he had a whole little debacle going on in Atlanta surrounding the injury history and everything, but I do think this is a perfect move for the Raiders because, like you said, if Fernando Mendoza is not a day one starter, it's okay. Like you can buy him time because I feel like that if you put him into a bad situation, it's only going to hurt his development even more. And I think that who better to learn from than a guy who's honestly, he's pretty much been a starter everywhere he's been, from Washington to Atlanta to now here, even in Minnesota. He's had success. We harp on Kirk Cousins a lot for not getting it done in certain games and when it matters, but he's been consistent. Like this guy's been a very steady quarterback. He'll be able to come in, teach Mendoza everything he knows about playing the quarterback position. So you have Kirk Cousins that you can that can take you under his wing. You also have Tom Brady, who's the greatest quarterback of all time. I think that this is a perfect situation, and it gives you some depth and it gives you some security from the quarterback position in the case that, like I said, he's not ready. If Fernando Mendoza is not what they believe he will be, I think that he'll be, I think he will. I think that he's one of those guys that, obviously he was successful in his last year in college, but I think that he is going to take a while to figure it all out because, like I said, now the game speed is a little bit different. Having to read NFL defenses is a little different than college. I think that he's going to have a learning curve, but like I said, if you have veteran presence to help you navigate that curve, then I think it'll be okay. So I really like the move from Las Vegas. I think that they're trending in the right direction after having a terrible season last year. But, new head coach, ownership that's backing you up. I think that everything is gonna go right for them this season, even if it's not like necessarily leading to a playoff spot. I think that they're trending in the right direction, which is you can only go up from last year. And also, I think with a few of the other things that they did. I think bringing Max Crosby back, I think that helped solidify them as well because I think that he was in one of those positions that he never really wanted to leave Las Vegas. I think that he always made it clear he wanted to be a Raider. Probably frustration boiled over at some point, but like you actually have some legitimate pieces coming in the door, especially with the free agent signings they did have. That's why I say I like the moves that they did. Um, I think they're trending because they could have been one of those teams, those bottom dwellers that just sat on their hands and had a bunch of money and just did nothing with it. But they actually went out, and I can actually see them trying to actually fix the issues that they had last year.
Another note to make about Cousins to the Raiders that I think is also significant is he spent some time with Clint Kubiak for 3 years of him being a coordinator or a coach of his. So there's already a good relationship and a good rapport already built there. But I also think this comes with the understanding of knowing that you are here to be like a quarterback's coach, a mentor, and maybe even a backup quarterback to this young man. That's why we're bringing you here. This is not the same situation as when Atlanta signed him to that huge contract and then turned around and drafted Michael Penix Jr. This is a totally different situation here. And I do believe that he's bought all the way in on it, meaning Kirk Cousins. And again, this is how you set guys up for success. This is how you put a proper plan in place, meaning Fernando Mendoza here, because if he does start on day one, KB, God forbid, but we see this happen all the time. Injuries happen in the NFL, and you need to have a viable backup quarterback option that you can go to. And I know that folks have had their things that they've said over the years about Kirk Cousins. We've even said it at times here on this show. But he is one of the more viable options for a backup quarterback that you can have. And also the fact that he's been in the league so long that having to pick up and learn a playbook is almost probably nothing to him at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And then it's like also like we always give Kirk Cousins like not always, but and not necessarily us, but nationally he gets his just due, but then he also gets his criticism as well. But like you said, if you're talking about he would automatically become one of the best backup quarterbacks out there. I think he was one of the better backup quarterbacks last year, even when Penix went down. So if you're talking about bringing in a guy who's seen it all, and he's like, when I say seen it all, he's seen every defense that you could possibly imagine in the NFL. Him picking up a playbook for a year, it's not going, it's not going to hurt him. It's going to actually help him because, like I said, if he has to step into a role, I think that, like you said, it is a little different than the Atlanta situation because I don't think that everything was clearly laid out to him when he signed with Atlanta that we were going to take a quarterback top 10. I don't think that this is the same situation. I think that there was a understanding we are bringing you for a mentorship role, and if necessary, we will elevate you to the starting quarterback if we feel like this guy isn't ready. But we are here to get behind this guy and Fernando Mendoza, who is more likely going to be the number one pick. We're here for you to mentor him, teach him. Like I said, him and Tom Brady being there to help give him guidance. That I mean, you can't really ask for too much of a better situation to go into if you're Fernando Mendoza, because for all the doubts that some scouts may have had, this is a perfect situation. You go into a guy who's coming off of a Super Bowl, creative playbook. I think he'll be able to, maximize his potential if they really believe in him like that. I think that Clint Kubiak is going to be the coach to help maximize his potential because this is going to be a learning situation for him as well. Him being a first time head coach. So I think all of this is just it's set up to go in the right direction. Will it start off like that? It may take a while. It may take a while. I'm not gonna lie. Like AFC still is what the AFC is. So it's gonna take a while, but I look forward to I'm real optimistic about what they could be. I say about 2 to 4 years because it is gonna be a learning curve this first year. I don't think they're set up for the playoffs in this first or second year, but I do think that they could be one of those wild card teams in the next few years that could just sneak in. I could see that.
You're giving it 2 to 4 years. I'm gonna give it a max of two, to be honest with you, because if you know what you're doing, you can rebuild pretty quickly in the NFL. This is not like the NBA. So I'll give it 2 years. I like the plan that they have in place there. Now, there also is the world where you have to explore, is somebody going to pick up that phone and call the Raiders and try to give them a king's ransom full of draft picks to try and get that number one pick? And is there a world where they take it? Me personally, I don't think that there is, but could there be a team out there, aka the New York Jets, that might offer up something like 4 to 5 first round draft picks? And if they do that, are you forced to have to take it at that point?
Me personally, hear me out. If somebody was offering, you said 4 to 5 draft picks. Now, where in this, like, are we talking?
Oh, these are all 4 to 5 first round draft picks.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, because you don't get those type of deals too often. And if I'm, if I'm looking at the overall landscape of things, we're not gonna compete this year. Probably not gonna compete next year, depending on certain things swing. But if a team were to offer me for the number one pick 4 to 5 first round draft picks, I'm taking it. I have to, because when I think about, the only way I would not do that is if I'm passing up on a generational talent. Now, as much as I do like Mendoza's game, I do not think he is generational. When I think of generational, I think of so many other guys.
Andrew Luck, John Elway.
Thank you. Andrew Luck was generational. Like, you could not pass him up even if you wanted to. Like, that would be the stuff that gets people fired. Like, even when it came to guys like, if you want to go as far as like saying guys like some of these guys were projects coming out of college, so they didn't necessarily have the generational label, because even Lamar didn't have that generation. He was an amazing athlete, but he didn't have generational. Neither did Josh Allen. Neither did Pat Mahomes. Some of these guys, they were great athletes. They had great arms. They had, they were mobile. They had a lot of things, but they weren't generational. The only way I think that you do not make a trade like that is if that player is generational. And it's only a few guys that you could say throughout the history of the NFL coming out of college were considered generational superstars. Like Deion, we already knew he was a generational star, but he's not a quarterback. Quarterbacks have to be considered, like, we saw it all. Like, it was even some that probably considered Cam Newton generational coming out of college, him being what he was.
Yes, but do you remember back around that same time period, there were people who were also saying that if Andrew Luck and Cam Newton were in the same draft, there's still a good chunk of general managers who still would have taken Andrew Luck number one overall over Cam Newton?
I'm not even mad at that, because I don't think that people realize what Andrew Luck was at Stanford. Like, he was a dog. He was the only, him making Stanford like relevant that year. And you saw the arm talent. You also saw his ability to extend plays. Like, I seen everything I needed to see from him, like, before he got drafted. So, like, if some people were saying, I would prefer, and it also comes down to play style too. Like, what do you prefer? Like, Cam Newton obviously being, a physical specimen in himself. Like, Andrew Luck wasn't a small guy either. He was a big dude too. So, like, it was kind of one of those things like, where, pick your poison. Like, I'm not mad at, if you consider Andrew Luck, like, no matter who's in that draft class, I'm taking him no matter what. I'm not mad at it, because I can't disagree with your take because of what I saw. I saw with my own two eyes Andrew Luck being what he was, and then coming and transitioning to the NFL. If not for the injuries, Andrew Luck would still to this day probably be considered a top 3 to maybe at worst 4 quarterback in the league. Like, that's exactly the trajectory he was on.
No, he was amazing. Nonetheless, Cam was amazing too, but just from a pure quarterback skill set, Andrew Luck was absolutely amazing coming into the league and inheriting a pretty poorly constructed Indianapolis Colts roster. Remember, they went 2-14 the year before he got there. Of course, that was the season that Peyton Manning had to sit out with the neck surgery and the issues that they were having there. And the quarterback was Curtis Painter and all of these different things. But Andrew Luck comes in there year one to the playoffs. Next year, back to the playoffs. Third year, all the way to the AFC Championship. After that, things kind of fell off the rails a little bit in terms of injuries and different things like that. But absolutely special nonetheless. We'll continue to follow all of the developments with what's coming out of Las Vegas with Kirk Cousins, as well as any other NFL news that's happening, because there is a rumor that is happening that Odell Beckham Jr. and the Giants could have a reunion with each other once again. Now, I do want to say this though. If anybody's expecting him to come back there and be the one-handed OBJ that we saw in 2014 that made that spectacular catch on Sunday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys that basically put him on a global map like almost like no NFL superstar ever, you are sadly mistaken. That is not the Odell Beckham Jr. you're going to get at this point. But can he come in and contribute and be a good leader in the locker room and a good mentor for Malik Neighbors? I would say yes, especially at this stage. I believe he's matured a lot. KB, there's some more breaking news that we got to get to, and I've actually been waiting for this one. The Pittsburgh Pirates are promoting number one overall prospect Konnor Griffin, and he is making his major league debut on the big stage this Friday. Your thoughts?
Hey, let's see what he got. I mean, I think that this is exciting news for them. I'm really interested to see what he can do. The Pirates ain't been relevant in a long time, so I think if anything, this will at least get Pittsburgh buzzing about baseball again because, could he be the savior? Could he be something that, they've been needing for a long time? I don't know if he'll be as dynamic as Andrew McCutchen, but he could be something that, like I said, at least gives you hope for the future. So I'm really looking forward to seeing his debut. I will be watching. I'm not gonna lie, if my Braves are not playing, I will be trying to flip back and forth and trying to see exactly how his debut. But I'm wishing him, all the luck in the world because, like, they're like I said, they're being something like I don't want to say like a hex on the Pittsburgh Pirates, but it's not been something other than Paul Skeens. I don't think there's been really too much to talk about them lately. Like there hasn't been much, so I hope that he can come in and do something, do some great things.
So I had a chance to watch him play a couple of times because the Pirates, they call this destination that I'm located in home for spring training. And I do believe that he's special. ESPN's Jeff Passan believes he could be the MLB's next teenage superstar. So he could be the next Bryce Harper or the next Mike Trout. And what a phenomenon for Pittsburgh if that would indeed be the case. But I was just wondering a few days ago, like, when is Konnor going to get called up? Because I knew that he wasn't going to be long for the minors. And to start the season in AAA Indianapolis, he went 7 for 16 with 3 stolen bases. Yeah, it was time to go ahead and call him up. And you say outside of Paul Skeens, well, they're in the news too for some other reasons right now that they probably don't want to be, and that is the mysterious case of O'Neal Cruz, who just cannot get it right out there in the outfield for whatever reason. So hopefully this is the jolt of electricity that this team needs. They've actually came out to a pretty respectable start onto the season. If we're being honest here, I know it's early, but they're 3-3. They did some things to revamp this offense and this batting order in the offseason too. Spent money like they've never spent it before. Going out and getting Ryan O'Hearn and making the trade to get Brandon Lau and Jake Mangum. So they're trying to do things a little differently than they've done it in the past. Sometimes this takes a little time to get some things to gel. But if Konnor is everything that he is projected to be, to go along with Paul Skeens, I told you, I think that the NL Central is more wide open than people think. And I'm not disrespecting the Brewers or the Cubs when I say that because I know what they did last season. But baseball is a game of momentum, man. And this is truly something where anything can happen. And everybody has to remember, we're speaking right now about the game from a perspective knowing that none of these teams have even played 10 games in the regular season so far. I mean, right now, the leaders in the NL East are the Miami Marlins at 5-1. Do you honestly think they're going to win the division? I'm not disrespecting them when I say that, even though they did make some noise late last year. But do I think they're going to keep it up to this level? In my heart of hearts, no, I don't necessarily think that. The only thing that I'm for sure about when it comes to Major League Baseball is that as long as they're healthy, the Dodgers are going to be standing somewhere in the postseason, and that's when they're going to make noise. Other than that, I'm not sure about anything else that happens in this league. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, like you said, it is a wait and see. Like it's too early in the season to call it right now. Like I said. I just seen some of his minor league stats, and like I can honestly see why they're excited. Social media page going out and putting out that it's going to be his opening debut. So obviously, everyone knows exactly what he could be. Like he could be all-star level potential, possibly one day even being the MVP if that's what people see him as. Like I said, I'm one of those people that, outside of, I haven't I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't pay too much attention to the Pittsburgh Pirates. I just watch what I do watch, and most of the time it is when unfortunately they make headlines either for more so the bad reasons. But I will say that this is something that could really like change the trajectory of a franchise, like right here. This is something that, like, when you're talking about a guy who turned around an entire franchise, like you remember when Bryce Harper first came to the Nationals, and I remember how excited people were for his debut. He ended up turning around that franchise, even though he never got to take part in their World Series run. He did help turn that franchise around. Sometimes it just needs like a spark to
He at
turn that
least had them
franchise around.
relevant.
Yeah, yeah. So it was, kind of something. I'm not gonna say it was similar to them because similar to that situation because you're talking about two different times right then. Like you talking about a guy making his debut, nation's capital is completely different. But I do think that he could be somewhat similar in the sense of he could be the spark to turn them around completely. So I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I will be watching it, and flipping back and forth between me and them and my Braves. So I'll be watching them and making sure I keep note of how he does.
And one more note to make of this before we go on to the next topic. Konnor Griffin, his positions, center fielder and shortstop. Well, what are the positions of O'Neal Cruz? Center fielder and shortstop. So that's something to continue to keep an eye on. Now, obviously, O'Neal Cruz will remain in the lineup for now, but if these struggles continue in the outfield, he's going to lose his position at some point eventually, more than likely to Konnor Griffin. And if he can at least be something of an offensive firepower, they'll try to find some type of way to keep him into the lineup. I would say that they can put him at designated hitter, but you got Big Bear Marcell Ozuna there for that now. So that's probably not going to be the best spot there either. It's a developing situation out of Pittsburgh now, and it is something to keep an eye on. And it at least does give the Pirates some form of a talking point, not named Paul Skeens, to discuss. So, we'll continue to keep an eye on that and continue to keep an eye on the team that I believe honestly could shock some people this year and end up in the National League playoffs, and that is the Pittsburgh Pirates, because I like some of the things that they did. Brandon Lau and Ryan, like I just like it. But we'll have to see how those things continue to develop. But there is a lot going on in the basketball world too, staying in the college basketball world. March Madness is upon us. It comes to its conclusion at the end of this weekend, an extended weekend, if you really want to say it, because I consider the national championship game for men's basketball, since it's played on a Monday, I consider that like a sports holiday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, we've got Final Four matchups, national championship matchups that are happening. We don't know who's playing in those national championships yet, but we do know who's going to be in those Final Four, starting with the women's KB. And this is pretty much how I expected it to go. Maybe in one bracket, I had LSU as a representative over somebody else. But other than that, I picked three women's brackets, and in three out of the four, the Final Four ended up being exactly what it is. UCLA going up against Texas and UConn going up against South Carolina. You know how I already am going to go with this. UConn's my favorite to still continue to win this thing overall, but if there's anybody I think can get him, it is that team in Texas with that budding superstar Madison Booker. Where do you stand?
Yeah, man. I'm looking at this like this is exactly. I think we even talked about this a few episodes ago. This is exactly the Final Four I had. I didn't really foresee too many upsets in the women's brackets. I think that UConn still is in a class of its own. I do give South Carolina's a puncher's chance to win because I do think that from everything that Dawn Staley is gonna have against her, like she is gonna have that. You're gonna have to beat Gino if you want to actually call yourself one of the greatest women coaches of all time. I think she already is one of the greatest women's coaches of all time. But like I said, I know that some people have said that they're tired of the excuses after some of the losses. So I do get that. I do feel like that. UConn still is my favorite to host that trophy. And even with the Texas UCLA game, as much as I really want to pick Texas, I'm not so sure that UCLA isn't going to give them the fight of their life. I think that UCLA does so many things and they're balanced too. I think that that's the reason why I give them a chance as well. So if I had to say that I do think it will be UConn versus Texas in the national championship game. But like I said, I'm not counting out South Carolina or UCLA. I think that both of them are very, I think they're very defensive oriented, and I think that especially South Carolina, I do think that they will make things tough for UConn. I do think UConn's the most talented team in the pool still. So I'm looking forward to it. Like I'm actually crazy thing is I'm actually more excited about the women's bracket Final Four than the men's just because we're seeing four number one seeds go at it. So I do want to see the women's a little bit more than the men's. I do think that the men's um Final Four will be elite as well because we got some really good matchups coming up in that part of it as well. But I think that the women's bracket holds all of the excitement, the drama, everything that you're looking for in a Final Four. I think that they have it. So I'm really looking forward to it coming up.
Yeah, I understand exactly where you're coming from with that. I want to say one thing to something you said, though, to folks who are giving Don Staley a hard time. Don Staley is already one of the greatest women's basketball college coaches of all time. Now, is she going to be the greatest? No, more than likely not. That's not a knock to her, because nobody else is either, except for one person, and that is the man that has been at UConn since 1985. Nobody's getting to that. And as a matter of fact, he shouldn't just be on the Mount Rushmore for that. He should be on the Mount Rushmore for greatest college basketball coaches of all time overall, greatest coaches of all time in the history of team sports overall, in my opinion, with that dynasty that he has built in Storrs, Connecticut. You will never see anything like this again. I am very curious, KB, that once he finally does decide to hang it up, whenever that will we get a documentary series about UConn and as they built through the years through the Gino Auriemma era? Is that something you would be interested in seeing?
Oh yeah. Man, listen, I think that you said it right. That title of greatest college basketball coach, especially greatest women's college basketball coach, it only belongs to one man. And I do think that a documentary is coming, and I do think that his retirement, like, is going to be something that is not going to be superseded by any other retirement. And I'm even going as far as saying it won't be superseded by anyone on the men's side as well, because of the fact that, like you said, been at the school since 1985, led them to multiple national championships, even have coached the player of the years for his program multiple times. If you look at from the women that he's had, from Breonna Stewart to Maya Moore to a host of others, he's coached some like Hall of Famers. That's why I say like it's levels to this coaching thing. And like I said, even when you were talking about Don Staley already in my book, and should be in a lot of people's book as one of the greatest women's college basketball coaches of all time. She's accomplished many things, and I think she still will accomplish many things. But like I said, Gino's been the standard bearer for years, standing on decades of success. So I do believe that, we can't discount what it is that he has been for women's college basketball because, like I said, it was to the point where people were tuning in when UConn was on a 100-game win streak. They were tuning in to see who would be the first one to knock them off. I remember this because it was even making ESPN headlines like years ago when we were in high school, even when we were in high school, that they were making it seem like, okay, this was like the evil empire. This is like the evil empire Yankees. They were making it like out to be that. Who would be the first to knock off UConn in their reign of terror? Because we probably won't see anything like that again. We just got to be honest. We may never see another program replicate that level of success that they had, especially in his heyday. Geno 100-game win streak. That was just like what actually that's what was expected. He expected dominance. He didn't expect them to go out and just coast. He expected dominance. They were beating teams by record margins. Like I don't think that people can understate like what it was to watch women's UConn women's basketball. And I'll say maybe from the early 2000s, I mean from the late 2000s to like possibly the early 2020s, like they were dominant. And now that they're still dominant, like it's kind of like, okay, so it's only a one constant that you can point to, and it's him always.
To answer that back up, I'm simply just going to say this. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the trend that's been going on the past couple of weeks with folks doing these videos of what were you like in the 90s and people following it up with you just had to be there. When it comes down to that UConn dynasty you're talking about, people who didn't see it in real time, you just had to be there. You just had to be there to witness what they were doing night in, night out, week in, week out, season in, season out. It was an absolutely unbelievable thing to sit there and watch that, even if you got tired of it at times. Because I was one of the ones who got tired of it for sure. But it doesn't take away the greatness that it was that they had. I'll put it like this. Take the KD, Clay, Steph Warriors and multiply it, I would say probably times 5. That's pretty much what that UConn dynasty pretty much is. Take what the Patriots did for 20 years, multiply it by about 2 or 3, along with the San Antonio Spurs. That's pretty much what UConn has been. Even in the years, they had about an 8-year gap that they didn't win a championship. And every single one of those years, because of who the coach was, you always knew they're a threat to get there. They're always a threat to get there.
And I think that a lot of people also got to understand like what we're seeing from both the women and men's side of UConn. They got a chance to both win a national championship, which they haven't both done together since what, 2014, I believe. That was the last year that both of them won the national championship. So UConn, when you think of UConn, you think of basketball, regardless of men or women. You think of basketball. Like that is a basketball school. Now, I think that, like you said, it was a lot of fatigue coming back in the day when we were seeing that win streak because it was just like, y'all not really, this is not really like exciting because we knew it was just like when you say like you step on the court and you know a team has no chance. That's the feeling I got back then watching a lot of those UConn women team play some of these teams because I knew like just from an athlete standpoint when you talking about multiple 5 stars, even the ones that weren't 5 stars, the way that he was able to develop them, they might as well have been 5 stars. And be honest with you, they were legit. They like it was to the point where they were saying like at one point because some of these UConn women's teams beat some WNBA teams. That was a conversation at one point too because that was just like and that was one of the people that were saying maybe I don't. I mean, I'm not gonna say no. I'm not gonna say yes, but I'm not gonna say no either. Like they were that dominant. So, and like I said, having some of the players that they had, I can understand the conversation. I really could.
We're going to give you more of our Final Four predictions a little later on into the show in part 2, but we got to talk about the men's Final Four too. You said you were more excited for the women's. I'm actually more excited for the men's because there's a lot of unpredictability on this side. You got Arizona and Michigan going up against each other. Those are 2 number ones. Those are the only 2 number ones that made it this far this year in the men's tournament. Then you got a number 2 seeded UConn team versus a number 3 seeded Illinois team. I don't consider any 4 of these teams as a Cinderella, but if I had to look at any of the 4 that I didn't think would be here, it would be Illinois. I learned a lot about this team in the past couple of weeks, KB. I honestly didn't know that they were like this. I did not expect them to go on the floor and do what they did to Houston. I expected Houston to do that to them. And I've been watching very closely throughout this tournament, and Arizona looks like the favorite out of the 4 right now, in my opinion. Michigan would be number 2 for me. UConn would be number 3. Illinois would be number 4. But it would not shock me if either four of these teams hoisted up the trophy on Monday night.
Yeah, and it's such a shame because I really feel like we could be watching the championship preview with that Arizona Michigan game. I really think that that was going to be like that's going to be some fireworks in that game. I really think that Arizona still is the best team in the field, but I do think that Michigan has shown like, hey, we can still hoop because we saw them early in the year. We saw them lose to Duke. A lot of people had hyped that matchup up, and it was worth, the price of admission. If you were able to watch that game, you saw it was a back and forth game. It was really like Clash of the Titans. Now, this Illinois and UConn game is going to be really, really interesting because, like you said, I did not see Illinois making it. Hell, if we're gonna be honest, I didn't see UConn making it if it wasn't for a miraculous, a miraculous blunder. But we'll get into that later.
So for me, when it comes to UConn, I didn't have them making it this far in maybe three, possibly four of my brackets that I filled out, because for the men, I filled out six because I honestly felt that there were 6 to 7 teams that I thought had a legit shot of winning this championship coming into the tournament. I don't ever count them out because of who their coach is, who is one of the top five in the sport right now, because of who some of the players are and the experience they have in the past few years of winning national championships. So I don't ever officially count them. It doesn't surprise me that they're here as much as it surprises me that Illinois is here.
Yeah, Illinois is definitely the surprise, the shocker of it all. I think when I say that I, UConn, I didn't have them there. I really did have Duke there. I did. I even had Houston representing before I had Illinois. I think that it was more so the fact that UConn is, like you said, amazing coach. He's a psychopath, but he's an amazing coach. I really say that like that man got some screws loose and like for all the right reasons. Like he's like a mad scientist when it comes to his coaching thing. So I will say that Dan Hurley's done a great job. He had his players play all the way to the final whistle, and you never know. Like they say, it's March Madness. You never know how certain things are going to turn out because a lot of teams couldn't have made that play that they made. I do think that Illinois is going to be up against a team because, like you said, sometimes you can still ride momentum from that last game and it could take you to a national championship. Sometimes that one shot could just be enough, and like you catch a team that at the wrong time. I personally think that Illinois, while they've had an amazing run, I think that this is where it comes to an end. I think that they run into the wrong team at the wrong time. I think that they got a team that's out to still prove something to the world pretty much that game wasn't a fluke. Like we can represent, for the national championship. And then I think on the other side of things, Arizona, I think has just been showing it all year. I really think that they're just the best team. I think that this is pretty much what's expected because they've gashed two great teams in Arkansas and Purdue in back-to-back rounds. I think that you can't really I can't look at anybody else other than them as the favorite because what they did to Arkansas and then being able to come and create distance with them in Purdue, I was just like I'm looking at a complete team. They're balanced. They play defense. I really look at everything that they do, and I was like, this is a national championship team. If I'm looking at one, like this is everything. Now Michigan is going to give them everything that like. This is going to be their best matchup of the season by far. I think that Michigan is a well-rounded team as well. I think that they can shoot the ball. They're athletic. I think that they can do everything that could cause problems for Arizona. I do think Arizona has too much talent to overcome. I do think that. So I will look at right now. If we were just making too early predictions, I do got UConn versus Arizona in my national championship.
And we'll talk more about that in part two as well. I just want to close out this part of the segment by saying this. I hope you're right about it being a competitive game between Arizona and Michigan. And I say that because we thought that Arizona and Arkansas was going to be must see television, and it turned into flip the channel real quick. I have no idea what we're going to end up seeing in this one.
I hope so too, for my sake, because like I said, I don't want to see a blowout in the Final Four. I really want to see a competitive game because, like I said, those are two deserving teams. So I really Want to see that. Now, the only difference I feel like between that, I didn't think that Arkansas was at the level of a Michigan. That is the only difference I can see. I think that Arkansas had a potential superstar and Darius Acup, but I didn't see them as being to the level of a Michigan, to the level of an Arizona, even the level of a Duke. I think that they just happened to run into the best team in the country at the time, and they were very unfortunate to, get blown out like they did. But I do think that this is going to be a pretty good game. Like I said, you got two number one seeds going at it, which is the only number one seeds that we have left in the whole tournament. So hopefully we see some fireworks. I want to see a good back and forth game. I don't know about you, Ace, but I want to see that because that'll let me know, are you ready for this national championship? Like that'll let me know everything from that game.
No, I'm right there with you. I want to see a competitive game too, but unfortunately, the way that life works, we don't always get what we want. Hopefully, this is one of those scenarios where we end up being wrong in that circumstance and we actually do get what we want to see here. But you brought up UConn being here because of some blunders that happened. So let's go ahead and get into it. That was one of the all-time meltdowns that we saw by the Duke Blue Devils on Sunday in that Elite Eight matchup. From Caden Boozer's blunder in the closing seconds of the game to the fact that Duke had a 19-point lead at one point in this game, and it felt like it was all but over. I was ready to turn the channel. And then I slowly started watching UConn come back. And when they made it a 9-point game, KB, I said, uh-oh. That's all I simply said. Because I knew at that point, I was like, they're in trouble now. Because you're going up against a well-coached team. You're going up against guys who don't fold under pressure. They're showing you they don't fold under pressure. And this is the second straight year that a Duke team has blown a big lead in a big spot and ends up losing the game. My focus is more so on the fact that they blew a 19-point lead than it is on Caden Boozer's blunder. Because no doubt about it, it was a blunder. All you had to do was hold the ball, get fouled, go to the free throw line, and hit the shot, young man. But I'm more so concerned about the fact that they blew that 19-point lead. That's what I'm more looking at in this
Yeah,
case.
and I'm with you. Like I can look at the blunder at the end of the game that ultimately led to the to them losing, but you should have never been in that situation to begin with. How do you? It just baffles me that like now give all credit to UConn because they could have folded when they were down 19. I give them credit, but I also look at Duke kind of funny because I don't understand why and this is just amongst basketball in general, college or NBA. You play to the final whistle. We always talk about that. Like the conservative, playing conservatively, are you playing not to lose or are you playing to win the game? Because there is a difference between the two. I think that they were playing not to lose and they were kind of resting on the morals and resting on the things that got them the 19-point lead in the first place. Like, you got to take care of the ball for one. And you got to be timely on these possessions because the game isn't over. Like we talk about March Madness all the time. We've seen great comebacks over the years. We've always talked about you got to put your foot down on teams and you got to give them no hope. Because if you give them hope, great coach teams know how to cut a lead in half. And once it's down to under 10, it's game on. And once it got down to that point, I knew they were in trouble. I knew that they were in trouble because it was to the point where you allowed them to have hope. And when a team is desperate, you see that they're willing to do anything. Now, when it comes down to Caden Boozer, yes, I would have liked to see him hold the ball. I really would have liked to see him hold the ball, make them foul you. Make them foul you, protect the ball. Don't try to make a risky pass because you had two ahead. You didn't need to make that pass. It wasn't even, I don't even think that that would have been the pass to make. I think that, credit to UConn for making a hell of a play because I think that, you know, that was a hell of a play to make, not only to get the steal, but to make that shot. You got to give him credit. But like I said, Duke should have never been in that situation to begin with. And it does make me look at them kind of different now because it's just like, how many years are we going to keep making the same excuse for you every single great in the regular season? Flame out in the play. I'm sorry, in the playoffs, in the tournament, and it was unnecessary. Like you should be getting ready. You should be getting ready to possibly go to a national championship game. And instead, you're out based off of, your lack of assertiveness in the second half. I think that is something that is on coaching. It is on coaching, but I give 50% blame to players, 50% blame to coaching because you have to finish that game. There's no way you should lose that.
I'm with you there, but what I do want to say right now to everybody out there is I hope y'all know that John Shire isn't getting fired. Like I've seen people calling for his job and trying to compare his situation and Hubert Davis's situation. No, these are two totally different situations. Hubert Davis went home 2 years in a row in the round of 64. John Shire went home in the final four and then an elite eight. So he's brought himself time with that, and just over the fact that recruiting is still at a great level. They're still putting in great regular seasons, winning ACC tournaments, all these different things. So he's going to still be there for a moment, but this was concerning to see this. Unfortunately, Caleb Foster was not able to be a factor in this game for Duke either. He basically saved them in the Sweet 16 and helped get them to the Elite Eight. Shouldn't even have been playing in that game, we're being honest. Young man had just had surgery and comes back and plays that great game in the Sweet 16 and not really able to do too much in the Elite Eight matchup. One person I do believe that we need to give credit to for UConn, because Braylon Mullins, and rightfully so, he hit that shot, has been given a lot of credit, almost being heralded as UConn's savior. You got to look at Terrence Reed Jr. and what he was doing throughout that game. Even when they were down big, he was the one that was helping keep them afloat while everybody else was just giving somewhat steady contributions. So he's somebody that you need to look at as a hero coming into this game. But no matter what ends up happening in the Final Four matchup with Illinois and UConn, I do believe that Alex Karabin will have a bounce back game. He did not have a great game offensively in the Elite Eight matchup against Duke on Sunday. Only 5 points, 2 of 10 from the field, 1 of 6 from the 3-point line. So I expect him to show up and play big for them in that game. And again, you want to tune in to part 2, where we will give you our official Final Four and national championship predictions. But we got to get to some quick hitters, man, because it's been a lot going on in the sports world this week. And we're going to stay in college basketball on the men's side first, because one of these coaches who is coaching in the Final Four, well, he might be getting ready to pack up shop, even though it's just rumors right now. Tommy Lloyd to UNC rumors are heating up. As we discussed last week on the show, Hubert Davis was dismissed as the Tar Heels head coach. And the number one name that we've been hearing for the past week is Tommy Lloyd. And a lot of this is because of what he said in a press conference about there will be another coach here after me. It's a very tongue-in-cheek thing that he said, because you can view it two different ways. You can view it in a way as he's trying to say it as, yes, after I'm done coaching here, there will be somebody else coming after me. But you can also view it as, why would he even bring up something like that in the first place if he's planning on staying there? Now, I'm hearing a report that when it comes to the University of North Carolina and that job, I don't know how true this is, KB, but the report is that Michael Jordan got on the phone himself with Tommy Lloyd and called him about that job. And when I look at Tommy Lloyd, he honestly looks like a UNC coach to me. If you look at this man in the face, does he not look like a young Dean Smith? Like, honestly, does he not look like him in the face if you like really look at it well?
He definitely looks like a UNC guy, and I think that it is something to be said about him not officially closing the door. Like I said, if he's getting phone calls from Michael Jordan personally, I think that just shows the level of how important this is for UNC to get this guy over from Arizona. Especially, think about from a recruiting standpoint. You got a guy that possibly could come off of leading the number one team to a national championship and then possibly jumping ship. That's why you know this UNC job is different from any other job in the country, because of the fact that a guy who has basically all this job security, who basically has everything going for him in Arizona, to possibly want to go jump ship and go to the ACC and lead UNC. I think it is something to be said about the mystique of North Carolina as a basketball program, to be able to get guys over here who, they have he has no real reason, if you want to be honest. If it wasn't for North Carolina, he has no real reason to leave Arizona. None. I think North Carolina is just one of those jobs that basically it doesn't come up very often. Most of the time the coaches there are very, you know what I'm saying, besides Roy Williams, they're some of the longest tenured coaches in basketball at UNC. So Hubert Davis, going from Hubert Davis to now possibly going to him, it's just it says a lot about them being able to attract people to their program. I will say that if Michael Jordan got him on the phone, I ain't gonna lie, he might be as good as gone, bro. I ain't gonna, I'm not gonna say no, but he's not denying his interest in that position. He's not denying his interest in going to North Carolina. Like I said, if he wanted to shut the door, he could have done that immediately and said, "No, this is where I'm at. This is where I want to be." But he's not denying it. So there is potential that he could be, this could be a Cinderella run, and he's out.
Well, of course, he's giving everybody's favorite. I'm focused on this team. I'm focused on what we're doing. Answer. We've heard a lot of that over the years by coaches in different sports. The Tommy Lloyd situation to me almost feels very similar in some way to what we saw with Lane Kiffin last year at Ole Miss. And to those who don't follow college basketball deeply, I just want to say this to you. Arizona is not some cupcake job. This is a very good program. Now, there are rumors out there that Tommy Lloyd and the athletic director don't get along, so that doesn't help things either. But yeah, if you got the call from his airness himself, yeah, I do believe he's just about as good as gone. Switching gears to the NFL now, Aaron Glenn made some comments this week about Geno Smith, who the Jets brought back as their quarterback for this upcoming season, saying that Geno is a guy that he believes is going to help lead them to the promised land. Well, KB, I got a new term for promised land when Aaron Glenn says something like that. It's called doom, because this is going nowhere fast at all. I understand you want to show confidence in your guy, but I'm just not confident in anything the Jets are doing. Before I hand it to you, did you see this week where the Jets posted on their Twitter/X account basically showing everybody who they're planning to take at number 2 overall with Arvell Reese, and then the wide receiver out of Indiana possibly as the number 16 pick? They floated that out there as a possibility. That's one of two things to me. One, why are you showing your hand to everybody in the league on what you potentially plan on doing in the first round? Or are you trying to get the approval of your fans to see if they would be down with you doing this? Either way, it just screams inept organization.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, that's stupid. I didn't see it, but now that I've been informed on it, if you're relying on fans, especially a lot of the fans that are casual fans, to help you determine who you should take in the draft, that already lets me know where you're at as a franchise in general. Organization wise, y'all are a mess. And like you said, if Geno Smith is taking you to the promised land, I got a new way of defining promised land, because promised land means something completely different to me. Promised land to me gives me hope. Promised land means that you're gonna get us to the top. You're not even getting to the playoffs, brother. Let's slow down. Like, you're not getting to the playoffs. You still have many holes in this team. Like, you just pretty much, you had players, and I say players, you had guys like Breece Hall who were like, dang, everybody getting traded. What about me? Like, he knows this is a dumpster fire. If you're talking about bringing Geno back, like this is going to be some Disney story of redemption, I'm not sure. Do I think he could have a better year than he had in Las Vegas? Yeah, but that's not really saying too much. That's really me. That's low hanging fruit. Like, at this point, anything would be better than what he did in Las Vegas. And I do mean anything, X. I'm not even going to say like he's going to be I'm not even going to sure if he's going to even be a top 15 to 20 quarterback. That's just I don't really have too much confidence in this team right now. It has
My
nothing to do
answer for you to that is absolutely not.
Yeah, see, it's just like I like Aaron Glenn. I think he's a good guy. I think he could even be he's a great coordinator. I haven't seen yet if he could be a great coach, just because of everything that the Jets are right now is a complete train wreck. So it's kind of hard to evaluate a guy like that. But I just don't even know if he believes what he's spewing out at this point, because
Geno Smith, based off of last year, what do you believe he can lead you to? Because if you think that the promised land is in your future, I hate to be the one to break it to you. Not only are you destined for last place, I have more confidence that the Dolphins will be better than you with basically a whole new team than you will be. I have
because it feels like they have direction.
they have direction, they have hope at least. Like I don't have hope for this team. And that's not saying they don't have playmakers. They still got playmakers. You still got Garrett Wilson. You still got Brees Hall. But if we're gonna be completely honest, like the buck stops there. Like I'm not confident at all that y'all are gonna even be in contention for your own division, let alone playoffs. Like you can forget that dream. That's why I say promised land. Maybe it means something different to us. Maybe it does, but I'm not going that far.
And I also want to say this to everybody right now, too, because we did this last year when we first launched the show. In the first 2 episodes, we did this. I'm not going to fall for the week 1, week 2 special where nobody has any tape on this team yet, and they might pull out a win over somebody you don't expect them to pull it out over, and Geno Smith might go out and have a spectacular performance. Like Justin Fields did in week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we came in here and we were like, oh, the Jets might have their franchise quarterback, and oh, how wrong we turned out to be. So I want to make that clear right now that we will not be making that mistake of doing that again. As far as the Jets and their fans go, all I got to say is God bless you. Staying in New York, pivoting to another sport, New York Yankees, KB, they are debuting a new chicken bucket for fans that can go out for purchase this week, but there's a kicker to this. It's not actually chicken. It's a drumstick shaped ice cream with a chocolate covered cookie bone center and a coating of white chocolate and candy corn flakes served in a souvenir mini chicken bucket. I can't tell you how much this made my stomach turn at just the fact that this is ultimate new savage levels of big back behavior all the way around. But this also goes to prove another point that we've been talking about when it comes to this organization. They are doing their best to try to show that they are trying to make as much money as possible. But the focus does not feel like it's all the way there on baseball as it once was. This used to be an organization that was about winning and making money, with winning being the first priority, and it just doesn't feel like that's the priority anymore. And this is just another example of it to me.
Yeah, man. This just seems very gimmicky and very like you really do realize that we care more. Like people who come to the game do not care about that. Like we don't care about like any of these new concession items that you're trying to unveil. Like the product on the field sucks. Guess what? I don't care. We do not care like at all. And it just, like I said, shout out to them for, trying to make some more money, I guess. But point being is, man, the Yankees, they're running out of excuses, man, at this point. They like I know you sick of watching what you've been watching. I know it. Like, I have been encouraged by like Max Fried so far this year. I think he's looked good. But man, I could care less about this. I really could. I don't have any further comment on that because it's just very gimmicky.
So for what I'm about to say next, to some people out there, if they tuned in to the very top of the show and you heard what we said about the Pittsburgh Pirates, what I said about them in particular, you're going to say that I'm sounding like I'm talking out of two sides of my mouth. But the Yankees have a different standard as an organization. The expectation is World Series championship every single year, even if you don't have the roster for it. Because of the fact that there have been 27 World Series championships won, and in my life, I saw the Yankees as the last three-peat dynasty in baseball. We'll see if the Dodgers can do it this year. There's just a standard that's upheld. And it just doesn't feel like the standard is being upheld with this. And you say shout out to them for trying to make more money. I'm not giving them a shout out for continuing to add to the possibility of adding to America's obesity rate continuing to go up. No, get this off the menu and get it out of there quick. Make this just something you're doing for the month of April and then get it off the menu. I hope it goes nowhere fast, quite honestly. And to the people who decide to partake in this, please make sure that you're sitting by to the closest restroom possible because you're going to need it. Switching gears back into the college basketball world and going to the WNBA now, the Connecticut Sun are going to be no more after this season, KB. Tillman Fertitta, the owner of the Houston Rockets, purchased the team earlier this week, and he is moving them back to Houston in 2027, and they are going to become the Houston Comets again. How do you feel about this move?
Yeah, it's very nostalgic, man. I'm really actually in favor of it. Like it helps me bring it back a little bit to, the early WNBA days. So I'm actually in favor of it. Like I said, you expand into a bigger market. I think in Houston, basketball is king around there. So I do think that this is going to be good for their organization as well. And shout out to him. He saw an opportunity, he went after it. He saw a team that he could possibly turn into something like in certain cities, like you feel bad for Connecticut, but you feel great for Houston because bringing them back to Houston, I think this is a good move.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too. It's better marketability wise, nostalgic purposes. We'll see if they can have any type of glory that the Houston Comets had way back in the day when they absolutely dominated the WNBA. Was a four-peat dynasty there with Cheryl Swoops and the team that they had there. We'll see what he's able to do. And one more quick hitter for you. And this is a developing story out of Iowa State University, but Audie Crooks, the college basketball superstar in women's basketball, she is announcing that she is entering the transfer portal. And like I said before we even started the show, I think it needs to be to either two of the USCs or UConn. And I'm not just saying that in terms of what those programs represent and who plays in those programs and who she would be alongside. If she buys in, they're going to put her in the best position possible to get her conditioning under control. And I'm not saying that Iowa State hasn't done that. I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying that because I'm not. But they're going to put her in the best position if she goes to a Gino or a Don Staley or even a Vic Schaefer down at Texas. I believe that could be interesting too. They're going to put her in position to have the best of everything that she can possibly have. And they're going to get her the most ready for the WNBA because I imagine that she does have aspirations of wanting to go to the WNBA. But it's on her to buy all the way in on this. She is spectacular offensively, but defensively things have to get better. And the effort overall just has to get better too.
Yeah, I think that she's a great offensive player. Personally, my personal opinion, I would think that, I would like to see her go to USC because University of South Carolina, for people who need a clarification. I would like to see her go because we've seen what Dawn Staley has done with, some great post players in Aaliyah Boston, Asia Wilson over the years. So she knows exactly what it takes for them to be able to dominate, not only from a defensive perspective, but also offensive wise as well. I think that her getting her conditioning down is going to be priority number one, no matter where she goes, because her being a defensive liability has been exposed, especially this year not only in the tournament, but even in the regular season. We've seen the further you drag her away from the basket, she's almost ineffective because she has like her lateral movement is not good enough to keep up with some more mobile players. I do think that she is, like I said, she could have a future in the WNBA, but everything is going to come down to her locking in, buying into whatever program she goes to. Because, like I said, if your mindset if your mindset is to not change your, change not only your conditioning, but change your philosophy on how you are going to be able to, play the game. I think that it doesn't matter where you take her. She has to buy in mentally first. She has to buy in mentally first before she can actually take that next step, because she could honestly be a great player. Offensive wise, I don't think there's too many people that can handle her. But defensive wise, she's going to be a liability for as long as we can see it. And that could keep her from being an all-time great because of the fact that she is going to be a liability no matter where she goes if she continues on the same path. So I wish her well. I do want to see her do well. I think that she just needs to go to the right program that can honestly unlock, more out of her, really.
And that's going to do it for part one of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. But you'll want to tune in to part two because if you haven't heard, Tiger Woods is back in the news again, and it's not good news. X and KB coming at you. We'll be right back.